Thank you, Father Kowarski, Father Kelly, Bishop Hicks, Father Borello, Reverend Fathers, virtuous business leaders, beloved sisters, any and all honored guests, and finally, my dear, dear brothers. I'd like to begin actually with a story of a businessman. So there was this businessman. He was living in New York, and one morning he wakes up and he notices that his alarm did not go off. So quickly he puts himself together and then he rushes outside the building and he notices that traffic is completely busy, so he's not going to take a taxi. So he decides to take the underground instead. So as he's rushing down the stairs to get onto like a little subway, he bumps into this blind boy who's holding a crate of apples, selling them for 50 cents. And as he bumps into him, the little blind boy, he drops the apples and the apples start scattering everywhere. And the man, he's able to get onto his train and he's looking out, and all of a sudden he looks at his watch and notices the time. And he says, if I go out and help this little boy, then I know for a fact I'm gonna be late. And he steps off the train. Doors close and immediately the train leaves. And he begins bending down and he starts picking up the apples one by one, putting them in the crate. He goes up to the blind boy and he hands him the apples. And the little boy, he grabs him by the arm, pulls him in, and says, "Thank you. Are you Jesus?" That little boy, are you Jesus? I've listened to many priest hero talks sitting where you are, and I believe that those priests that inspire us most are those that cause us to say, just as the little blind boy did, "Are you Jesus?" And there's a great many priests that have inspired me over the years that have been Jesus to me. And there's one that I'd like to share with you today, and I knew him as Don Alessio. I met Don Alessio while I was in my Rome semester. So living in Rome, we were staying at the Irish College, and if there's two things I want you to know about him, the first one would be his joy, and the second would be his pastoral heart. And while I got to see these attributes at the Irish College that we were staying at, it wasn't until I went to visit him at his parish that I really got to see these on full display. The joy that he had when he was with his flock was something to behold. It radiated. He loved them so well. From pizza parlors to coffee shops to random encounters on the street, it seemed like everyone knew him. And he knew them, not in a passive way, but in a way that was deep and personal. He knew their story. I think he authentically lived out, when I quote Pope Francis here, "Be shepherds with the smell of your sheep in the midst of your people, like Jesus the Good Shepherd." And I think that he authentically lived that out. And I think one quick story that I want to share with you that just exemplifies this well. After we were done with Mass, he said, "We need to go to these two houses because one of the families," this was during the time of COVID, "could not make it to the church. And so he's bringing Jesus to them." And I just remember him bringing the Eucharist there, just like the humility that he had, and again, just the joy. But the second one really left an impact on me. You see, this other person that couldn't make it to Mass that day, she couldn't make it because of COVID, but rather it was a different disease. She had this debilitating disease that was taking over her body. She was losing muscle atrophy. She was losing muscle ability. So much so that she needed a breathing apparatus to breathe. She couldn't hardly even speak. The only way that she was able to communicate with us was by just mouthing Italian to Don Alessio, or her husband, and that's how she was able to speak to us, by feeding to the whole thing. And she couldn't receive Jesus in the host. She only could receive him through a pipette in the precious blood. And I wish I could bring you there to that moment, because when Don Alessio came into that room, the joy that was radiating from her bed was like just something to behold, you know? It was beautiful. And he was laughing with her husband, and just embracing her. And I so vividly saw the image right there of Christ reaching down to his wounded bride. Are you Jesus? I'm so thankful for this priest, because it inspires me to try and love in the same way. Because for me, he showed me the loving, wonderful, joyful heart of Christ. And for that I say, praise be Jesus Christ.